the most significant contributor of the BPO industry, the Outstanding Entrepreneur Award, the Business Leader of the Year Award, and I could go on and on. But Raman, they're all here to listen to you and your journey and your story. And you've got Shradha in to kick off this really kick-ass course that you've put together. So I have to hand over the class to you and let you take it on from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Priyank, and good afternoon, folks. All I can say is I hope over the next few weeks and months, we'll have a lot of fun together. In that fun, I hope there'll be a little bit of learning, a little bit of exchange of ideas, a little bit of agreement, and a little bit of disagreement to say, no, that's not what it is, and that's not what it's about. So while we'll talk a lot more about the course and the session, etc., at this point of time, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce Shradha Sharma. Nobody better on entrepreneurship than to introduce all of you to the concept of entrepreneurship. She founded YourStory, a digital media platform dedicated to startups and entrepreneurs. Is a founder and the chief executive officer, which she launched the company in 2008. Shradha, that was the time I was on my third startup, or maybe my fourth, I don't know. Her company has been declared India's biggest and definitive platform for startups and entrepreneur-related stories, resources, news, and research reports. Before launching her startup, she served as the assistant vice president at CNBC TV 18, was also a brand advisor at the Times of India, and she wrote the book called Cut the Crap and Jargon, Lessons from the Startup Trenches. We are going to use your inputs to cut the crap and jargon, Shradha. Shradha went to the St. Stephen's College and then MICA in Ahmedabad. So what Shradha and I, we chatted a little, we said she'll talk a little about her story, not just your story. And then she'll talk a little about the experience she's got. She's met dozens and dozens and hundreds of entrepreneurs and bring out the concept of entrepreneurship. With that, over to you, Shradha.
Thank you so much, Raman. And I have to say that, we've all looked up to you, and I'm very honored and privileged to get invited by you. And of course, Ashoka University. I know a lot of students and ex-students and great respect for the college and what gets there. And thank you, Priyank, for having me here. Thanks a lot. And I don't know what to talk, and I'm hoping that all of you will have questions so that we make it non-boring. The good part it's on Zoom, so you can switch off whenever you want, unlike the class days where we had to sit and listen to boring lectures. And I hope this that you wouldn't have to deal with that, and you can switch off anytime that you want. But anyways, I was thinking, what should I talk about? And one of the things that, I was thinking that when I was in college and I was doing my master's, a very, very important and fundamental thing, which was, and then most of us who come from middle class backgrounds have this thing that, oh, we have to get a job, and we have to get a good job in a good company with a good salary. And I wonder if that has changed, but primarily that remains very, very true and real for many of us. And it has to be meaningful. It has to be purposeful, of course, something that we enjoy. And I did the same, because I come from a background where there was no looking back, as in I couldn't ask my parents for money. I did that. But having said that, I was told to talk about entrepreneurial mindset. I don't know what entrepreneurial mindset is, but I'll share with you something that I've lived my life according to this thing, is that I think there is something called limiting heart and limitless heart. And the more we think from our mind, because that's what we're taught, and in our school, in our colleges, in our community circle with friends, is use our mind. And when we start slightly lowering the mind space and start listening to our heart, then the heart has the answer of what you want to do. And somewhere I want to take all of you to my growing up years. I grew up in Bihar, and the time when I was growing up, people used to make a lot of fun of Biharis. I don't know if you guys do that, but when I was growing up, the way you speak Hindi, right, and the way you talk was very much ridiculed. And I went to Stephen's, and then one of the questions when you go to Delhi is everyone is used to ask me at that time, Bihar mein, Patna mein road hota hai? And I was like thinking, I'm like a monkey who's come from some zoo. And and how is it? Is it safe? Can you walk alone on the street? But those were realities, because I grew up in an era where it was a very, very different world than hopefully the world that we are living in. And one of the things which I've told many a times, and which has defined a lot of me, is that, when you speak in Hindi as a Bihari, you say, instead of मैं आ रही हूँ, हम आ रहे हैं, और हम जा रहे हैं, और हम ये करेंगे. So when I went to college, everyone used to ask me, हम आ रहे हैं, आपके साथ और कौन कौन आ रहे हैं? And I was like, हम आ रहे हैं, like I am coming, and मैं, and everyone used to start laughing, right? And many a times people would say, oh, why don't you talk in Hindi? And then I thought, oh, everyone finds me very cute. And when you're young, and then you're like, oh, everyone thinks that my way of speaking is so nice and so amazing. So they're asking me to repeat it. But basically, everyone was making fun because of the way one was speaking and talking. And to me, that was a very important point in life, because somewhere we all have a sense of who we are, but as we grow, it is very much defined by the noises and people all around us, right? Like our own sense of self-worth, who we are, what we stand for, what we do is not what we think. We don't even realize subconsciously what others think around us defines a lot of who we are. And for me, that became a very important point, that how we talk, where we come from, which family we come from, all those things becomes our identity. But our identity is not that. Our story is not that. Who we are is not that. We are every day evolving, every day being very authentically, very nakedly us. So who is this us? And what is my story? And my story is not defined by how I speak, what I do, which state I came from, and all those kind of things. And they shape me, they don't define me. And that's why, after Stephen's, I went to Micah and I went into media, because I somewhere thought that stories and who we are has to be shaped, has to be defined. And very soon I realized that somewhere there's a huge asymmetry, where we all of us, and even today, want to listen to stories of someone who's very successful, who's done something amazing, but we don't want to listen to people and their raw, naked journeys, their stories, how they are defining their lives, how are they figuring out things. And that's how in 2008, when there was no startup word heard, I started YourStory to tell stories of these young people. And then today I have to tell all of you that we've told more than 120,000 stories, reach more than 12 million people, and it's read across the world. We do a lot of things. And then today the platform has grown into a house of multiple brands, SMB Story, Her Story, and different things. And I look back, then it has been a journey of just figuring out who I am, and not getting anyone else to define who I am. And in the process, give a platform to everyone who wants to define who they are and their journey. And that has been the journey of YourStory in the last 12 years. And that has been my story. And this is what I want to tell all of you, because today The decisions you take, what you're going to do, what you're going to be, how you're going to live your life, what partner are you going to choose in your life, what career are you going to take, is those decisions have to be very inner, very has to be very inward. And the question always you have to ask is that decision being, whatever decision I'm taking, is it being taken because of XYZ outside, or is it your very inner heart decision? And a quote which has really defined my journey is not get in the flow. And Rumi says this, that you don't have to get in the flow. All the time we hear get in the flow. The journey is be the flow. And you have to flow and keep flowing. How to get into that state where you're flowing when there's so much of pressure, so much of anxiety? How do you get into the state of flowing? And to me, that's the question that I live, and that's the question I try to answer. And just because we are all in difficult times, we are all living in very hard times and uncertain times, I want to say that one of the things very personal, and I share this because I want all of us to know that nobody's life is easy. Nobody's life is easy. Is that I had a very difficult childhood. I had a very difficult growing up years. I have had a lot of tragedies in my life, and I've talked about it. I don't want to go into it. And it's written, it's documented. But somewhere I didn't let anything limit me. It depresses, but how do you get out of it and say that I'm going to be the, master of my soul and captain of my ship, right? All of you would have heard of this poem. It's easier said than done. How do you make that happen every day? And that's what one has done. And in the process, had the privilege of interacting with millions of people and telling stories of more than 1 lakh people, and being part of that growth of the Indian startup ecosystem in the last 12, 13 years. And and that's something I think we're not taught in when we are living in a college life or school life, that how do you deal with your own self? How do you master your own moments? How do you live with that joy, right? Because I hope there were curriculums on happiness, right? Because happiness and flow, when you get into it, then you figure out your career, you figure out your path, you figure out what you want to do, and you figure out into that mindset. And the second thing I would say is that, we all live with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, and shame is in terms of, your own self-worth. And that would be questioned again and again and again and again. And it's going to be a journey, because there will be people who will question, and there will be people very close to you who will question who you are, what's your worth, and are you good enough? And unfortunately, we are living in an environment where this question is so omnipotent. Are you good enough? Because everyone is so good enough. And that answer also has to come from within, but you have to define your own boundaries, your own benchmark of how good you are. And something which I ask myself every day, at the end of the day, in the beginning and during tough times, is, am I being my best friend? And this I'm asking because you're all young. The question is that, am I being my best friend today? Right? Am I being my best friend? Because if I can't be my best friend, then I can't be your best friend, and I can't build a great business, and I can't tell the stories passionately. And that is something I would urge all of you to please think, because this is not something world is going to ask you. That the world is going to ask you, are you being a good friend to me? What are you doing for me? And that's the journey that you're going to be living, the world that you're going to be living, and what you need to ask yourself and write it down. Remember, in any moment of doubt, that are you being your best friend? And these are some of the things that I wanted to share with you. And after that, I leave it to all of you, and Raman, Priyank, if you have questions, I'd love to answer.
We have lots of questions, Shradha. We are not going to let you go easily on that. So you said you don't let anything limit you. Okay, you just said that. I took notes while you were talking. So I want you to take that statement and go back to when you were in college, St. Stephen's or early stage, because that is what our target audience is. There are 60 people who are in college right now. What was in your mind when you were in college, what you would do, and whether this thought of I don't let anything limit me was a thought at that time, or it evolved later? Bring that out, because I think our audience would love to understand your mind when you were in college.
That's a brilliant question. And I've spoken about this, but Raman, I'd like to tell this again, because I think somewhere it's very defining, and it would be defining for all of you in different ways. You'll have your own definitions. So when I went to Stephens, Stephens has this debating society where they select students, you get selected. And I was a very good debater in my school. I used to get all the prizes, and I was very known, and your name used to come in school, in a local newspaper. So when I went for this selection in debating society, I went with that confidence that mera to ho jayega. Matlab, I have to go, mera ho jayega, kyunki, I'm like so good at it. Like, this is something I know and I understand. And I went, and everyone, and there were people from all over the country, and everyone, sabne jo college mein the, everyone participated, people participated, and only 10 people were selected, and I wasn't selected at the end of the day. And what would be the normal reaction? My normal reaction was, this college sucks. And these people, they're idiots because they didn't realize my worth. And and there must be partiality, because they would have selected all these people from Delhi, or they would have selected all these high-flying people. So everything was wrong about everything. And I was like so disappointed and so hurt. And I felt so bad that I was wronged. And then after that, after a few days, I started thinking, no, maybe they selected right, but it's not that I was wrong. Maybe my school was wrong. I come from Bihar, back of beyond, the most poor state at that time. And my school was wrong. So my school, because I didn't study in Delhi's premium schools, and I studied in Bihar, so that was the mistake. So I went for summer vacation back home to Bihar, and I went to my school, and I met this teacher who used to really encourage me for, during my debates and all these competitions that I used to win. And she used to say that you have that talent. So I went and told her, and I said, ma'am, we are really backward. And she looked at me and she smiled. And I said, we just don't know. The world has moved ahead. There are different debating styles. And we have the same thing. Aa jao, stage pe khade ho jao, bol do kisi topic pe, and go deep in it. But we don't have that nuance. We don't have that flair. We don't have that exposure. And she kept on listening to me and kept smiling. And at the end of all my ranting and everything wrong about my school and about my teachers and everything, she held my hand. And then she told me that, Shradha, remember this. Jo nahi milta hai, wahi daudaega. What you lacked will make you run. And to me, that became a very, very powerful motto, manifesto, is that whatever I lack, or whatever the world says I lack, or whenever I feel I lack something, it's such a precious gift, because that will make me run. And life has shown a lot of lacks, and I have run and been able to run. And that is something I would say, Raman, if I go back to my college, after that, of course, I did very well. In first year, I was the 4th ranker in college, and achieved a lot, because there was a focus that, there are so many things I don't have. And for that, I need to run. And I would say to everyone, if you look, there's so many things we complain, crib about, and feel so disgusted and angry about. But I think the biggest and the most amazing opportunities lie over there, and that defined my journey.
Shradha, for this target audience, from such a successful entrepreneur that you are, what you're bringing out is there are stages of self-doubt. Then there are stages of introspection. I think in this story, you brought out a lot of things to look back and introspect and the conclusions may be very different of where you go down. They may even be erroneous, but the ability to brush yourself, take a deep breath, and then go forward, that is critical.
Yeah.
Okay, and to this class and a little later today, I want to talk about that is a trait, and it is nothing to do with being an entrepreneur, but it is to do with entrepreneurship. That is what is important. Okay, let me shift gears, Shradha. You have met a lot. There are so many questions I have to ask you, and I have a limited time. So I'll keep shifting and bringing in various aspects that I want to bring out for this target audience. So as your story, and you morphed into various kinds, the SME kind, the female, a whole lot of things that you've done over the last few years. As a result, you've interacted with a lot of entrepreneurs. Okay. Now, I want you to club all your interactions with entrepreneurs and try and tell us what is the common theme that you saw?
Madness.
Madness.
Yeah, madness. And
I agree with you. We entrepreneurs are loony. So define that madness. I mean, how do the students here take that? What is that madness?
I think there's so many things that have been very, very defining, and it's very humbling to meet people and learn so much. And then all these unicorns and everyone, I would say, and I've had the privilege of meeting some very amazing world leaders. And I would say by madness, I mean is that they don't, like most of us get also frustrated, like if we have to attend this session. It's like, oh my God, at 3 o'clock again, you have to sit through some nonsense, right? And
yeah. There's 60 of them saying that.
But what I've seen with entrepreneurs and people who've been very successful is that they just enjoy. You put them in a tough place, you put them because they have this mad vision and something driving and chasing them, and then I compare entrepreneurship to falling in love, and the first rush of falling in love, not being in love for 20 years or 10 years or getting married, but that first euphoria of love. You're so obsessed, right? Like you really want to talk to that person, video chat that person, and be obsessed. You don't think that, oh, you're wasting your time or you're doing anything. You're just in the flow. And entrepreneurs who go on to create something very outstanding, they remain in that state of love, and they're 24/7 in that state of flow, in that state of love, and they don't think, oh, it's hard, it's difficult, or there's so many challenges, and then that keeps them going. And then to me, that is very humbling, because the challenges when you break down in front of them are too many, and that's a reality. But how are they are able to navigate and be in that state of love? To me, that is something that stands out. And second is that the lens with which they look at world, because do you look at the lens with what are the things broken and what are the things wrong, or do you look at, oh, it is wrong, but let me fix it? The fixer mindset, the mending mindset, the solution mindset, and that
entrepreneurial mindset. That is the entrepreneurial mindset. Yes.
Like, oh, it's broken, let me fix it. Because I always think that there are three kinds of people. The bystanders who stand and have a point of view on everything. And we have in our country, we are a very point of view country. We are bystanders, we have point of view on everything. Then there are critics who will criticize everything. Oh, what is wrong? This is wrong, and everything is wrong. And then there are participants and change makers. They are the heroes, the heroines who say that, okay, this is wrong. I might have a point of view, but I'll just roll up my sleeves and fix it. And to me, people who've been able to create amazing stuff, do amazing things, have an amazing life, are people who constantly bring that fixing mindset, solution mindset. And to me, that stands out. And the third would be, which again surprises me, because I'm myself such a distracted person, is that a lot of amazing leaders I've seen, they're so mindful. there is a mindfulness, a presence. They're very alert in the moment. And to me, that's a great intersection between philosophy, spirituality, and professionalism, where they're so mindful. They bring themselves to the moment. They bring the whole totality of themselves to that moment. And that to me is very interesting. In fact, I would like to say something that I talk about, that I had the privilege of meeting the Prime Minister and interviewing him. And I met the French President, Mr. Macron, and then I met the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel. And when I met all of them, what was very amazing is that how distracted we get. I might be meeting someone and my thought will be in 10 different places, and I will be looking at my phone, or I want this to end, but they are just with you. They are there with you, present. They are completely alert. They don't let moments pass. They don't get hours pass. They don't let half an hour. If they're giving you half an hour, then they're completely with you in that half an hour. And to me, those are habits, those are practices, those are things, I think, those are things that you practice, you do every day. And these are some of the things that I see in the entrepreneurs and people successful over the years.
Fascinating. So, Shradha, talk to us about the time you decided to quit a job and decided to become an entrepreneur. I'm sure there must have been disbelievers or naysayers, just like, you just said, there are people who will comment and people who will criticize and people who do. I'm sure they would have been there. So, two things. What was in your mind to start your story? What was the driver behind it? And
Raman,
then talk to us about these naysayers.
Yeah, very nice question, Raman. So I don't know why I started. Sometimes I look back and like now it's going to be, this is 14th year of doing your story, and then sometimes I feel, oh my God, like this is like too long. I wish I hadn't started, but 99% of the time I'm very happy that I started. When I started, in fact, I was getting very good salary in CNBC, had gone into a very senior role. My mother was very happy because my whole life was anchored around my mother, and I wanted her to be very happy and proud of me because she had a very difficult and tough background. And I remember quitting. The day I quit, I told that, oh, I'm going to be quitting. And my mother cried a lot as if someone has died. And I was like so shocked, like, oh, is she my mother? Why is she not supporting? I said, listen, I'm going to do something digital. She said, what is this digital? And because in Bihar, and you've heard of Times of India newspaper, you've heard of CNBC, kuch suna hai, matlab digital nahi suna hai, and she was quite devastated. But for me, it was very important. While I was in CNBC and in media in Bombay, I realized that we are celebrating very successful people. We have like this FOMO of knowing the who's who, but who will tell the stories of people whom nobody knows? And I was meeting so many people who had such interesting stories. And the second thing I realized is that we are all so wired, and it's so biological and genetic, that we are wired towards negativity, and anything positive is so boring, so PR-ish, so nonsense. Anything, if I tell you something crazy, then you'll suddenly get alert, and I'll say, oh, listen, this girl is so amazing, and you're like, oh yeah, bullshit. So for me, two things were very important. How do you make positive sexy? Cool. And the second thing was that how do you tell stories of people whose story nobody is interested in? And somewhere it also came from my inner calling, because you're so written off all the time that you're not worth it. And actually you are worth it. When you start layering the onion of knowing any human being, you'll know that they have a story and there's something really phenomenal. It's not just the celebrities and film stars who have that. And then those two things were making me very crazy. And in fact, I named it Your Story also, because somewhere I just thought that it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about, if I celebrate you, your story, then we'll create a culture, a habit of celebrating unknown people, young people, and positive stories. And that's how I started. And in fact, there's I went to a party, and as a startup, you're very hungry, that people should know, because nobody knew your story. And I went in Oberoi, there was this dinner happening of all investors and everything. And I told this girl, outside. Can you please allow me to go for 10 minutes? I'll tell about your story to all these investors. And she said, no, because, of course, these are by invite only. I said, listen, I'll go. I won't eat food or anything and waste your head counts. I'll just go for 10 minutes and come back. And then she was like, oh my God, such psycho in this elite party. So she said, okay, you go, I'll time it. And I said, yeah, 10 minutes. I'll go inside. And I met 3 amazing men. And they said, oh, so what do you do? And I, as a young entrepreneur with pride, I said, your story. And they looked at me and they said, oh, what do you do during daytime? I was like, and they started laughing because stories you tell at night, no? Grandmothers, mothers tell stories. I said, yeah, this is what I do. This is my startup. And they all started laughing. And I was so devastated. But of course, you don't show, right? But it felt so, I said, then they said, oh, maybe now startups are really happening because people are starting a business out of telling stories. And that was my journey. But somewhere, I am telling you this story because this happened somehow 13, 14 years back now. But it stayed with me. And if they hadn't made fun, no, and they hadn't laughed that you do what you do during daytime, I think I would have left it during daytime. I did it daytime, nighttime, Saturday, Sunday, all the time for 14 years because I believed in this. And I'm very happy today that Prime Minister announced National Startup Day and all that, because somewhere I believed in the startups and everything 14 years back, and positive underdog stories. And yeah, so that's how I started.
So, Shradha, one sentence I've been aching to finish of what you started while you were giving this story. You said everybody knew Times of India, everybody knew CNBC, and 14 years later, I can tell you everybody knows your story too. And that is to your credit. That is to your credit of what you've been able to create.
Thank you.
So, Shradha, again, let me twist this around a little. What is your role model? When you meet so many people, at one level, I'm jealous of you because you interview all of them and you get to hear their stories and get to know about it. But within that, what has stuck in your mind as a role model? Or maybe not the people that you met, role model is outside that. What is Shradha Sharma's role model?
That's a beautiful question. Raman, I like people who are flawed. I don't know, I like people who have gone through pain, who have a lot of mistakes, who have made a lot of mistakes, and are ready to admit it and be cool about it and learn from it. Because I don't like picture perfect, very beautiful.
Again, I'm interrupting you. I'd like the audience to understand that that is a great trait of an entrepreneur, to respect mistakes and they respect the ability to do it right. So please build on it, because this target audience, these are, we all read about the stories, and you publish some of those stories, which is all the success side of it. But where you made mistakes is not spoken about that often. And people have to understand all entrepreneurs make mistakes, big mistakes, and they learn to overcome them. Please help us with some stories on that.
I'll tell you, there's so many stories, but I'll tell you one which actually you asked role model. Someone who inspires me is Mr. Ratan Tata, and I had the privilege of interviewing him 3 times, which is actually quite rare. And I'm
really jealous.
So I met him in person just before the pandemic happened, and one of the things that he told me, 2-3 things that stayed with me. One of the things that he said is that he said that he has made mistakes because whenever he's taken very emotional, instantaneous decisions. So one of the things that he started doing is that he would not take the decision in the moment when he's very emotional, and he'll wait. And when you wait and then take the decision, then you invariably take the right decision. And I thought that it's such a simple thing, but it's such a powerful thing. And the second thing is that he said, when I was talking to him, he said that, I said, what do you want to do right now? And he said that I want to learn some music, some instrument, piano or something of a certain kind that he wants to learn, which again was very, very impressive. So I asked him, why are you not doing that? He said, this instrument that I want to buy, it's very expensive. And I started laughing, right? Like, how for Mr. Tata an instrument is expensive, which he wants to buy. So I said, Mr. Tata, please don't pull our legs, right? Like people like us can maybe think about, oh, this is expensive and all that. Why are you saying that? Like, why are you pulling my leg? And he said something that has stayed with me. He said that, since childhood, I was raised in a way, and I grew up in a way and lived my life in a way where I never knew what it means to spend money on myself. And at this age, it's very hard to change that habit, to spend money on yourself. And it feels wrong. And to me, those are value systems with which people live their lives, right? And how certain things about your life, the way you've lived, that honesty with which you've lived comes across. One of the things which you guys, I don't know if you guys remember, the other thing I would say is that the Flipkart founders, the big billion sales, all these e-commerce sales that happens. So once the first one which happened, there was this whole internet issues that happened. It was a huge announcement and everything. But what I found amazing is that those founders wrote, Sachin and Vinny Bansal wrote a mail because there were some internet issues. This was the first big billion sales. And they wrote a letter apologizing to everyone, all the users and everyone, that sorry, we made a mistake. This was first time we tried such a scale thing. And I was like, wow, like, because they're successful entrepreneurs, and then coming out that, hey, we screwed up and sorry about that because your experience was not right, and apologizing publicly about that, which they didn't have to, because we as users will forget because we used to, but they stood for excellent customer service, excellent customer experience, and doing that. Those are the things that stay with me. And I've realized that that's why entrepreneurs who make the mistake, but who accept it. And it requires a lot of inner resilience, inner courage to accept that. Because in our culture, we just ridicule. How many of us will go and appreciate someone who's just said that, listen, I messed up? And entrepreneurs who've been able to do that are people whom I have, whom I have really respected.
Great. I'll open it up also, not now, not yet, but I'll open it up for questions. So for all the other audience, where you're ready with the question, maybe you can use the reaction button at the bottom, put up your hand, and maybe somebody from Ikanto, you can help
yes.
identify one at a time for people to do
Sure.
that.
Sure.
Shradha, while they get the questions right, so my last question, I just have about 100 more, but I'll settle for one for now. Tell me about the dynamics that work out, for an entrepreneur. You end up being with other entrepreneurs, right? And particularly in your world, you meet a lot of those entrepreneurs because that's your job. That is, you're writing about that. Tell me about the dynamics, not just the interview part. Beyond that, what happens? Do sparks fly between entrepreneurs? Are there disagreements? Are there collaborations? Are there what happens what is an entrepreneur to entrepreneur interaction like?
Raman, one thing I would say is that, it's a breed, right? It's like a community which can sense each other very well. So one thing I see is that largely entrepreneurs have respect for entrepreneurs because they know what it takes and how hard it is and how tough it is. So there is a basic level of respect. And of course, there are disagreements. Like, I just can't imagine, it would be so boring if there are no disagreements, there are no fights, there are no different point of views. In fact, there's something very beautiful I learned, two words coming together. There are a lot of ideological bunkers in which we all live, right? In different, we all have different points of view, and there are fights, but by and large, this community I like because they are upstart, they are challenging, they have a lot to prove, and they understand that, we have to stand for each other. And I see that happening more and more as the ecosystem is evolving. People are rooting for each other, but the challenge that still remains, I would say, in the Indian startup ecosystem is, and nothing is perfect, that we need to do a lot more in that direction of people genuinely collaborating. And then when you become successful, how there are a lot of entrepreneurs giving back, investing, supporting the ecosystem, but I just feel that we can do a lot more.
I agree with you, Shradha. So with that, I'll hand it over to the questions coming from our audience. Kanto, will you?
Yes, I'll moderate that. Yes, thank you, Raman. First, Krisha, could you come up with your question? And Shradha, it was really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shradha, thank you so much for coming. I mean, this was really inspiring. I can't emphasize this enough. It was so engaging. I loved listening to you. I could do it all day. But to my question, like, one thing that really appealed to me was, how you said that back then nobody really believed in what you were kind of doing. You had to crash parties and convince these investors, and they were essentially laughing at you. And I can't imagine how discouraging that kind of might have been, right? But I can't help but wonder, how did you find it in you to kind of keep going? Because sure, there's that entire thing about you believing in your idea and believing that this could be something, but how do you maintain that realism that, okay, this is actually something that people will like, right? Is that the madness that you're talking about in entrepreneurs? Just wanted to understand your mindset there.
That's a very beautiful question, Krisha. And I can give this answer, I don't know, in hindsight, right? Like, I have to look back at those times, that how did I survive and believe in, so two things. One is that, and that's why I can use the word right now, is that being very stoic. And I think entrepreneurship is also a learning and journey in stoicism. And I would request all of you to really Google search and spend a lot of time studying stoicism, even if you're not a philosophy student, is please do, from Seneca to Marcus Aurelius to everyone, is that, when you have this thing that there's nothing to lose, we get into a constrained mindset and we get bogged down also, and we get scared, most importantly, which we don't realize. We get scared of that failure when we know that there's something at stake to lose. But the good thing about starting up is there's nothing to lose. And when you go with that mindset, that what's the worst that can happen? Like, every time I ask this question, even today and every day, that what's the worst if I take the decision, if I do this, what's the worst that can happen? And you do that, it's so liberating that you will be able to carry through. And the second thing is that, data points, right? Like, for every one person who is insulting you or rubbishing you or saying that you're useless or what you're doing is bullshit, are there 5 other data points where you are encouraged? And data don't lie, right? Like, so for every person who was discouraging me, these stories which I was writing, those people were saying, oh my God, nobody has actually ever told my story. Nobody actually listened to me. So there were 5 people saying amazing. And that's where, you could carry on every day, because it's about every day. It's about that practice. We talk about resilience and all that. It's like getting up every day and showing up. How do you do that when you have that data of 5 people saying, then okay, this idea has legs and it will run.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Riddhima?
Shradha, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I really like what you talked about, and there's so much to take in. One of the things specifically stands out for me is the fact that you started this out in 2008, right? At both a time when blog writing wasn't considered quote unquote a serious career, and at the same time startups weren't being talked about in the same way that we talk about right now. So at that point, and funding wasn't available either. So at that point, were the things of the question of paise kaise kamayenge, how will we be able to earn, how will we be able to get revenue out of this, was that a question? And how did the scale to profitability or maybe revenue finally come up for YourStory then?
Ridhima, that's a very good question, and you have a future being an investor also, I must tell, because you've asked very good questions. I would say I'll be very honest, because now how can I bullshit and lie and make some different answer? Honestly, I didn't think about any of these things. I didn't think ki paise kaise kamayenge. I didn't think profitability kaise hoga. I was just going mad. I couldn't sleep at night because I was just not enjoying what I was doing, because the thought of what I wanted to do was so maddeningly exciting. And I thought it needs to be done. These stories, I was like feeling so passionately as if my story is not being told every time someone's story was not being told. So that was one. Second is also being honest that us samay I had savings. So I thought that, okay, 6 to 9 months, I will survive because I had some saving. And if it doesn't pick up by that time, then 1 year I'll give it and I'll go back to a job. Someone will give me a job again, right? So that cushioning, that some salary I had saved. And, when you're obsessed about things, then you don't spend money unnecessarily, right? We spend money when we are depressed, right? When we shop and then we go to all these e-commerce sites, but when you're really purposeful, then you don't end up spending. So I started saving, and I had a run rate of 6-7 months, actually 6-7 to 8 months, I would say. And then I thought that if I'm not able to make money, or worst kya hoga, band ho jayega, I'll go back to a job. So these two things were important. But then having said that, after 1 year, started making money, because I'm that old school entrepreneur who really believes that you have to be Atmanirbhar. And you have to make money, right? And especially when you have no backing behind and nobody going to give you that money, you have to. So after 1 year, started making money. And I was in fact, raised money after VC money after 6 years of running YourStory, and it was profitable. And it is profitable today. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for that.
Vinayak, why don't you go next?
Thank you. So the question that I struggle with is not if I want to be an entrepreneur, rather when I want to be an entrepreneur. So getting that timing right. So do you ever look back and think that you should have started earlier, or you should have saved a little bit lesser and given yourself a couple of months more in that starting period? So I would just love to know your thoughts about that.
Vinayak, first I'll give you the practical and then I'll give you the spiritual answer to this. One is that it's very important. I think it's a very, very, very right question, because all of us, if we are starting up or we are going to start up, we have this question, right? When? Because at least for me, I had, during my MBA, my mother had taken loan for my MBA education. So I wanted to repay my loan, not have that liability where she's repaying my education loan and all that. So I took a job and worked. And I also thought that it is important for me, at least I thought that, to get some job work experience, right? Because I didn't want to jump into something without having some context and understanding. And I think working somewhere and learning was very important and very crucial. And in fact, it came in very handy for me. So I wanted to have that work experience and money, because I was always very paranoid about money, because I knew that there's no fallback option, right? So either I'm making money, saving money. So these were important parameters for me to decide when to jump in. Having said that, to answer your question, I'll say, I know today you'll think that I'm just saying it for the heck of it, but you'll know it in your gut. Yeah. And before mind, gut was biologically, gut came before mind. Mind, brain developed much later. You'll know it when you have to. And until you know it in your gut, you'll be working somewhere. It just comes because you have to live that question that, oh, when do I want to? And then somehow there a lot of things start falling in place. And then I lived that question. In fact, the time I started thinking to the time I started, it was 1.5 years. right? The idea came and I jumped into it. It was 1.5 years because I also wanted to be a little more, think it through, not just instantly, live. Will this passion remain with me for 6 months, or is it just some emotional decision? Am I actually invested in it? So that was the time frame. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? That work experience that you mentioned, so was that relevant in terms of technical expertise, that is, you were working in a media house and you started a media company, or was it more of a confidence standpoint or a validation standpoint ki, okay, I've worked in the industry, I know how work needs to be done, and then I could have even started a non-media company. So what did you gain from that work experience? Was that a technical thing, or
No, that's a really good question. So one is that work experience helped me to realize that I don't want to work in a company. I don't want to do a 9 to 5 job. So that work experience was the biggest blessing, because I think industrial revolution got us this timing of 9 to 9. And today in pandemic, people are realizing, oh, you can work anywhere, do anything, but it's so regressive, it's so archaic. And I hate this thing of going to an office and swiping your card. It's so degrading as a human being to do all those things. So working was very important because I realized that God saved me. I never want to work in this kind of structure, in structured environment and all that. One. Second thing is that no, media, it was not technical, or it's not that, hey, I did media, so I wanted to start in media or this or that. But I think work experience helped me technically in terms of, I think work, what it does, it's like education. It's not what you learn in the class. It's the network that you build, the accesses that you build, the relations that you build, people you get to know, right? And I think work experience helped me to build, and the role I was in helped me to build a huge network of people, accesses, people I got to know, I could absorb and learn. Because somewhere when you start up, then you have a very, because you're so obsessed and you're doing that thing, that you, biggest challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs is access, the network. Whom do you go and do this with, that with, this with? So I had a huge network which got built, which to me was a, if you could say, technical or resource or asset or a very big help in my journey.
Natasha?
Hi, Shradha. Thank you so much for this candid conversation with us. My question is around, so you've seen a lot of founders grow and you've seen their business start and then take off. So do you think now where you are, you've developed some kind of intuition about, okay, this is a good business, or like, these founders have something about them that when you meet founders now, you feel like you can already identify where it's going to go in a couple of years?
Natasha, that's a very good question. In fact, I've started doing baby investments now, like baby angel investments, because over the years, I don't know, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. I really feel that if you spend time in anything for a long number of years and do it like not sleepingly, but awakingly, it's bound to develop your instinct, right? And it's bound to develop a kind of an understanding. And yeah, I think over the years, one has developed a knack of figuring out who will do well, and not necessarily 100% right, but yes, it's happened because you're in the trenches. It's like, I'll give an example, and is that if you're fighting, one is that you're playing a video game and fighting and shooting people and doing all that thing. But if you're a warrior, if you're an army person in the war and doing that, shooting with everyone, attacking you, you develop an instinct, right? And you become better and better in any profession. So yeah, after seeing so many, listening to so many, and tracking the space so closely, I think I have to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shradha, can we go ahead with a few more questions? We have a couple of hands there.
Yeah. I have 10 minutes more. I have another call at from 4:30. Yeah.
Pratil, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, Shradha. First of all, thank you so much for having this conversation. And this is my second entrepreneurship course at Ashoka, where we are studying about your entrepreneurial journey. So, coming to my question, you talked about madness and how madness has been the common thing that you have seen across the entrepreneur. And I think that was into you when you started your story in 2008, a business model with no revenue model at that point of time. And eventually you succeeded. But do you think, like in this cutthroating startup era where everyone is running behind the numbers and figures, is passion and only madness one thing that can make any can make any enterprise or entrepreneur successful?
That's a very good question. And especially today, it's a very good question to ask. With every day we are hearing about startups and funding and everything. I would say that starting up and getting money, raising money can be easy today comparatively if you're very focused and if you have plans and everything in place, but I would say that Prati successful hone ke liye na, unfortunately, that good old boring word, passion, feeling for that thing that you're doing is very, very important, because it's so hard journey and it's a long journey, right? Everything that we hear is like, oh, this one got this. They worked for like donkey years, right? They did many, many night outs. And I would say that to succeed and to stay successful, you really need to, really, really need to be invested and believe. And otherwise it will be a short-lived thing. And I've seen that, right? But only, yeah.
Pratham?
Hi, Shradha. Thank you so much for being here. So in an interview you did with Upgrad, you mentioned how you never thought of YourStory as a small company when you started out in comparison to like the other big media houses, right? So I wanted you to throw some light upon how important was the fake it till you make it attitude.
Pratham, it was not fake it till you make it. It was delusion. It was madness. Whom will I fake it to? Nobody was listening to me. I could, you fake it when you have an audience. It was my own madness that, and yeah, to answer your question, yes, I always lived in this fantasy land where I thought, oh, everyone in story I'll have, and this will become big and everyone would love it. And yes, dreaming is a good habit, I think. And I dreamt and I dreamt and I dreamt. When nobody believed, the more nobody believed, the more I used to go and dream, because what else can you do? And I dreamt. And I think it's a very important attitude, because you really need to fundamentally believe in the vision and dream about it and think that, yes, this is going to be big, because nobody is going to come and tell you, oh, this is going to be big. You get what I'm saying? And nobody's going to say, like, nobody's going to come and say, hey, you're a superstar, you're really good at this. How many of us genuinely give compliment to each other? You tell me, as basic as that, right? So somewhere, that's why I said it's very, very important to be your own best friend. What's cool about me? If I ask all of you, if I take a class and say, what's cool about you? I'm telling you, फट लेगी. बहुत difficult होगा आंसर करने की, मेरे बारे में क्या cool है. अभी मैं कहूँगी उसके बारे में क्या cool है. Suddenly you'll say 1, 2, 3. So yeah, believing in that magic is important.
Thank you.
Shradha, I take the liberty to ask you a question here. I'm sure there have been failures through your entrepreneurial journey. Want to know if you could tell us about one, how you dealt with that situation and how you deal with failure in general.
Earlier I used to take failure very personally. And I'll be very honest that it was so personal. It was like an attack on my own self, my self-worth. I'm like most useless, and you won't sleep. And I think all of us go through that, right? Like failure is very, very personal. But somewhere over the good thing is that you fail so many times as an entrepreneur that you get okay with it, right? Anything you do so many times, you start getting comfortable with it. So for me, one of the there have been so many. Which one should I pick? Yeah, one of the failures was that after I raised Series A, first round of funding, I did a lot of things. And in 2015 only, I launched suddenly stories in 12 Indian languages, like all the local languages. It was again way ahead, 12 Indian languages. And I quickly ran out of money. I was just running out of money. And I can't tell you guys how it was so traumatic. Like I used to get dreams. I was saying dreams. I used to get nightmares that I'll run out of money, because I've always been profitable, frugal, but somewhere investing in that. And but luckily the Series B came through, and in a good way, from a very amazing institutional investor, and that made me very conscious that I was chasing something which I was not convinced in terms of how quickly, and I was trying to do something very quickly, which is so not me and my way of building a business. And I listened when my instinct said no, and I head on was colliding and meeting with an accident. Luckily it didn't happen, but it made me very prudent. And that's why when pandemic hit in 2020, that month 2020, March, suddenly the day pandemic hit, announcement was made by the Prime Minister. Next day we lost some 5 crores of PO, like purchasing order, which we had got like instantly. But we were prepared, and I was very, very proud that during that prudence, right, that learning of saving and being proper with money, we didn't lay off anyone. And I'm very, very proud, from the peon to everyone. We kept everyone intact, paid all the salaries, and stayed true, became profitable. And again, this year became profitable. And again, this year will be one of the best years for us as a company.
Thank you so much, Shradha. And I'm sure you have been such an responsible entrepreneur that way. I guess some of the qualities get rubbed from Mr. Ratan Tata there. Thank you so much.